Hey everyone, I'm Beth McAndrews from Dread Central, and I am here today with some of the incredible minds behind the new film, The Innocents. So I am here today with Eskil Foot, the director and writer of the film, Jens Fodstad, the editor of the film, Bessie Levanto, who composed the score, and Sturla Groveland, who was the cinematographer. Hello everybody, how are you?
Hi.
Hello.
Nice to be here. We're fine.
Great. Well, congratulations on this movie. I am very excited for everyone to see it because it's pretty twisted in a good way. I mean this. So first off, for Eskil, so you have come off of The Worst Person in the World. You wrote that script. It was incredible. I love that film. So what was it like to go from that to The Innocents? Two very different movies in terms of tone and subject matter and all that good stuff.
It was actually the opposite. I made The Innocent right before The Worst Person. Actually, I was casting The Innocent while I was writing The Worst Person, and then because of COVID and lockdown, everything, the movies caught up with each other and have been released simultaneously. Where they were both in Cannes last year, and so it's been on top of each other almost, which is weird. But it's been great that when the movies ended up having premiere at the same time at the same festival, it was kind of good that it was so different, that the movies are so different from each other, because they weren't compared to each other. No one used one movie to criticize the other or vice versa. They just live their own separate lives, which is great.
Cool. And so I'd love to hear from everyone else about kind of your first reactions when you kind of read the script or saw the film or got involved with the film, because it is so different. So Sturla, I want to start with you. What was it like to kind of come onto this project, and what were your first reactions when you read the script or heard of the film?
I guess I got in touch with Eskil through the producer Maria, who we both I worked with before, and Eskil knew also, and she connected us and sent me the script. And of course, I knew of Eskil's, first film Blind, and also his work as a scriptwriter. So I kind of had high expectations, I would say, and which didn't disappoint, absolutely not. And we met in Oslo for lunch, I believe, the first time, and had a nice talk about the project, and I felt like we connected over the script, and then actually it sort of went into it lacked some financing, so it took another year actually to get it financed before we kind of started getting deep into the material. So I had a long time to have it sort of dwell on me and kind of take in the story, and I think that was also nice. But I really loved it from the first read and till to the premiere screening.
Yeah. Jens, what about you?
I think it's a fantastic script. I found it very intriguing. When I read it, I saw some very interesting challenges editing wise, and I think it's also a script that it's almost like I think it's because the way Eskil writes, the film language comes off the pages. You kind of so I saw a film when I read the script, I had no problem saying yes, I want to make this film with you. And then it was also quite unpleasant reading in a positive way.
For sure. Oh yes. I call this movie unpleasant, but I mean that as a compliment whenever I talk and recommend this movie to people. And then Bessie, what about you with reading the script and getting involved?
Yeah, I was brought into the project by our Finnish producer Mark, who had gotten together with Maria, the main producer, and they had sort of agreed that maybe Mark could provide music and other parts of the film, and he called me and like, this is a really good gig, you have to read the script. And I did, and I was like Jens Christian said, that it was like, scripts are not supposed to be very like too descriptive. They're not novels, they're scripts, right? But like the very careful choice of wording and sort of the pictures came pretty vividly as I was reading it. And I was actually like the first time like, aha, so this is what a script is supposed to be like, and like I felt all the scripts I had read before sort of paled in comparison, and I didn't quite know where to place it, because it was like horror and it was drama at the same time. So I was like what is this? But in a very, very good way and very intriguing way. So I was like really hoping that we could, or like I was super motivated to be in the project, and I knew I had to win Eskil's heart to hire me, which I eventually did.
You have my heart now. Yeah.
I wanted to talk about the score because I was just listening to it and refreshing my memory, and the score you use like, I want to know what instruments you use, because you have this like childlike feel to some of the songs, and then it gets the pieces,
yeah.
And then it gets darker as well. So I wanted to hear more about the process of both creating the score and then also kind of the main instruments you used and drew inspiration from when putting it together.
Yeah, so when we first started talking about the score, we were pretty unanimous that we don't want like a Hollywoodian score, meaning that if we would have themes for the characters, like every time Ida would step on screen, we would play a little Ida's theme. That would be just stupid, to be honest. So we just sort of wanted it to be like much, much more minimalistic. And Eskil sent me the playlist of music he had listened to while writing the script. And that gave a really good starting point, because of course, many of the pieces, they had certain things in common. So because it's very hard, film music is not a genre of music. It can be any style of music. So it's sometimes very hard to begin if somebody, you just suggest something and there's a really big chance of missing, and doing a lot of unnecessary work. So it's good to narrow it down at first, and the playlist really helped me with that. And I mean, typically, if you have like a more traditional Hollywoodian score, you would do what I call top to bottom approach, meaning like write demos on your computer, and then in the end you would orchestrate them and make the parts for players, and you go record it and mix it and deliver it, and boom, that's it. But this time we went the other way, which I call the bottom up approach, meaning I sort of assembled a pool of material and use it as a sort of using like a collage method. So I blew a big chunk of the budget very early on without asking anyone on a string recording session. So we had like a smallish string orchestra, and we just played like various, textures and chords and just sort of random ideas. And I spent a lot of time like cutting them up and mangling them with like playing them through equipments and tapes and whatnot, and sort of made like a package of my own sounds for this project. So I mean, the string recordings are like the core of the whole score. And then also we had these gongs. There's an experimental drummer in Finland who has this like a rack of gongs he plays. Each gong is like this big, and there's like 20 of them. And I called him in for a day, and we just sort of like quasi improvised, and I recorded everything. And it takes a long time to sort of cut everything up into usable little samples, if you will. So that's how it is. So I would say that the studio was like my instrument. And then I submitted like a large, I think overall like 5 hours worth of demos for Eskil and Jens Christian to try. Because the kind of music that we were doing, you can't really do it with samples. It couldn't have been done that way. So I think this was the only possible method to go the bottom-up way with this, which is sort of good, because then your demos are like almost there, because they've played with real instruments already. And these guys, they sort of played around with them for months and months. And then I heard what they had come up with sort of layering my demos on top of each other. And then at the end, I got the whole huge session and I rebuilt and tweaked and added stuff. And that's how the score came to be. Quite tedious, but very rewarding and an interesting experience.
It was such a,
I had never tried before.
It was such a luxury for, and yes, Christian, you can add to this, to have all that music so well recorded so early in the editing process. And we could try stuff because I usually have a very clear idea of a lot of stuff I want to do, but each time a new collaborator is introduced to the mix, they of course have ideas and they can do stuff better. And for the music, I didn't have that clear an idea, to be honest, and we need to figure that out together. And it was such a good collaboration with Pesi, and yes, Christian is also very good with music. And I just love those moments where I could just like, Jens Christian wants to, okay, I have an idea of something here. And I could leave Jens Christian alone and he would just like take Pesi's demos and sometimes put them on top of each other and like do stuff and edit. I love the fact that your cat is doing a cameo here, Pesi. It's so appropriate for the movie for those of you who have seen it. I have two cats, Meredith. I'm a cat lover.
Oh, I also have two. I also have two cats. In that scene, I was like, no. Oh, a cat cameo. Hello. What is this cat's name? I apologize. Oh, hello. What is the cat's name?
I have two. This one's called Takku, and the other one's this guy's mom, who's called Yuksu, but she's more reclusive, so we might not see her.
Thank you. Cat cameos.
Sorry for interrupting.
No. The lovely thing was that when I listened to what Jens Christian had done, usually he had done something very interesting. And some composers would, if you send back and you have kind of mixed some of their music or whatever, some can be very protective about like, what have you done to my vision? But Pesi was like, oh, that's interesting. You know, and he would then do something in that direction, or he would explore. It was a way of communicating, and it was great that we had the time to do that and the music to do that.
Now that I've done a bit more of these like international collaborations where you don't get to see the director as often, I found that it's actually a very good thing to send a lot of material while the edit is still in process. Also because sometimes like if you send something to the director and they're home alone, right? And they're listening to your thing, they might not like, what do I do? What do I say? Like, but then if they're together with the editor, they can like, hey, what do you think? Is this useful? And they can have that discussion. I'm not present, but would you agree that I think it's sort of more, it's more helpful and more productive when the editor and director can talk about it. And once the edit is done, then the director is like, alone. Okay, well then you have the sound designer usually, but then I found that it can get harder with working with the director than when they sort of they don't have anyone to bounce these reactions and ideas with, you know?
It was a great process, and it's so because I mean in a lot of movie making or editing processes you use temp music, you use score from other films or whatever, which is something sometimes you have to, but it's not very good, because then you end up with it becomes sort of defines what you want to do with the composer, and then he's asked to do sometimes it's very frustrating for the composer as well, because you're asked to do something like this but not this. It's kind of, whereas with this having this from the very beginning, not using any other, just use Pesi's music from the very start, it influences the film in a different way and becomes part of the, just like the other material, you work with it from the beginning. That was very, very important to the end result. Yeah. Film music is of course it's always about function, but but it's much more than just, you know, oh, here we want something, you know, to tell. It's a bit sad, it's a bit happy. No, it's well, it's unique, you know, to this project. So yeah,
cool.
And also the way, yeah, you have to Eskil mentioned it, but the way you reacted, Pessy reacted to you know, quite disrespectful use of things, you know, putting things on top of each other, playing it backwards, and manipulating it in different ways, but it still comes from, you know, it's his music. So yeah.
Cool. And so, okay, I want to talk about the cinematography, Sturla. This film is so beautifully shot in this apartment complex that feels very stark, and both like stark, but also full of nature, which was a very interesting tension between the two. So I was curious how you kind of approached shooting this film and creating that tension between stark kind of architecture versus the natural setting where these kids are playing.
I think that was actually also quite well described in the script. This connection between the forest and these sort of high-rise buildings in a way, and it was I think maybe probably based on Eskil's you know, upbringing as a child in his neighborhood, if I'm not wrong, Eskil, that you had sort of...
I lived in a place quite similar to that for a few years when I was younger, and but you said you had some memories of a place that you could apply some of your memories to that as well.
Absolutely. I also grew up in you know, close to the forest and in a similar environment, not exactly as sort of dominant architecture as we ended up shooting in Rumsos, the location for the film. But it was an important thing to that we connected these two sort of, you know, the more urban, I guess, urban looking environment and the forest, because that is quite I guess common in Norway, that you have these two elements, and as a child you're very curious about, or you spend a lot of time in nature, in forests, and, you know, roaming around on your own and discovering things and playing with your friends, and so it's in a way it felt quite natural to describe that environment for me at least, and I think for Eskil as well. I'm not too sure if those our actors had the same connection, but you know, probably. So it never felt like we had to sort of invent something that was, you know, out of our imagination somehow.
Cool. And so what was the most challenging for you scene to shoot, both technically and maybe even emotionally? Because I feel like there are a lot of very emotionally taxing moments in this movie. So I'd love to hear both technically the hardest like shots and or scenes, and then emotionally what was kind of the hardest one for you to shoot.
I think technically it was probably, you know, the end scene, in sense that it was I think we shot over 2 or 3 days, so we were you know, depending on having some kind of weather continuity, and, you know, trying to you know, shape the light time of day. We were shooting in late summer, I guess, so it was you know, that was a little bit challenging, and also a lot of extras and a lot of shots, and this sort of whole, you know, it's basically you know, a big drama between two people that are not in the same space, you know, not in the same room environment, which, and to kind of, you know, enhance that feeling that they're actually communicating with each other and having this fight. I thought was an interesting challenge, and it was technically also, you know, there's sort of these magical things happening, and we had storyboarded the sequence and wanted specific shots that were technically complicated to achieve. So that was a big thing, and I think I was just extremely relieved when I saw the edit of what Jens Christian and also with Pessy's music, how it came together, and the sound design of that scene. I think it's so important to just
It's
you know,
also
connect all the
a scene like that, Sturla, we forget one of the challenges we had was that some of those scenes that are very, very dramatic or are supposed to be that, like a battle of life and death, it's basically mainly two kids standing there, you know, and doing nothing. And we are supposed to, through the shots and the editing and the sound design and the music and the effects and everything, to like make that telepathic war real in a way. And we were very scared about that. So I remember, like, will this just be very static and boring, and how to make that work, and how to mix these complicated storyboarded shots with some, we did some do some very close-up handheld to make it more alive, to feel that inner stress. And there was so many conversation about that. And yeah, and we were so relieved that it really worked. Yeah, it did.
It really worked, and it's like you have all these sort of small details and small instruments that you and Jens, I guess, were just playing with. That it's really like orchestrating, you know, like, or directing like an orchestra, like all these different tones and coming together. I thought it was so elegantly put together in the end. I'm super happy with that sequence. It's one of I think my proudest sequences that I've ever shot. So I'm super happy with it.
Cool. And then emotionally, like, what for you was maybe the hardest scene to shoot?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I'm trying to think. Emotionally for me, I think I think I was I think I felt with, you know, some of the children when they were, you know, challenged to the edge of their, you know, capabilities, and just like being challenged in ways that they hadn't tried before, and they were so up for it, you know. And I think that was just a really beautiful and impressive thing to see. I think one scene that sticks with me was where Ida gets you know, yelled at by her mother for not taking care of her sister. And I think, and that became a very emotional scene because Ida's reaction, Raquel, the actress, her reaction is real. You know, she was so nervous about being yelled at by her mother, which is Ellen is her real mother, you know, and also her mother in the film. So she was really influenced by that, and you could just see how she kind of cracks up. And I remember, like, they were having this long hug after we did that scene, which was it was just it was just really sweet in a way. That was the thing that she was the most scared of, you know, during the whole shoot. And also, yeah, it was just sweet and quite emotional.
And I'm also curious how you kind of explain some of the things that are happening to these kids. And I mean, obviously you were pretty straightforward, like, this is pretty violent, but so what was it like to work with these kids and kind of have them do these kind of horrendous things to one another and telling this to children, basically?
Well, they were children, of course, and they were very young. They were between 7 and 10 when we cast them, and the oldest ones turned 11 right before the shoot. But they were very, very intelligent kids. Yeah, and what I tried to do was to, of course, before I offered them the role, I talked to their parents, and the parents read the script, and they knew everything that would happen and gave their okay. And then I talked to each kid about their character. Because I knew I couldn't ask the children to read the script, and I couldn't tell them the script from beginning to the end because they're kids, you know. They after 10 minutes they will like look out the window and like miss their cell phone, you know. I have kids myself. You can't like do 2 hours of a script reading, you know. So I just told them about their character and what their character did during the movie and what happens to the character. And then I told them, do you want to work with us and play this character? And then they couldn't say yes or no at the spot. They went home to talk to their parents, and the next day I would call them, and that's when they said yes or no. And after that, I just had this rule that whatever question they would ask me, I would answer truthfully. And the rehearsal period, we would rehearse a stunt, and then they would, so this is what happens, and this is how that character dies, and this is, they would piece stuff together, and sometimes we would approach like a difficult scene, where there's like knives involved and a death, and and we would be a little bit afraid, and then the kid comes on to rehearse and takes the dummy knife and throws it in the air and goes, oh, so this is how that happens, and they'd laugh, and and because they're kids and they're so intelligent that they understood completely the difference between their character and themselves and fiction and reality. And even the 7-year-old girl was asking me questions about her character's motivation or whatever, it's so and we made very sure with the casting director, I was also helping me with the kids on set, that they had this ritual of understanding action being like, this is where you become that character, and you can do stuff as that character that you wouldn't do normally, and when we say cut, you are back to normal. So they were they understood this very well, and they have this feeling of, people think they just watch the movie and think, oh, they experienced that for a day or two, but no, you shoot in small bits. So we would you become, okay, now we are in that state of fear, and that lasts 20 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, and then I say cut. And they will run around and have fun because they're kids, and then there's my job go, no, we're not finished, we need another take. And they go right back into that thing, because they're great actors and they're also their kids. So they have that capacity of, they're not all adult method actors who need to stay in the zone of that feeling for a whole day. They don't function like that. So actually some of those difficult scenes, and some of them were difficult, of course, but most of them were technical and quite fun for them. And sometimes it were like those other stuff like Sturla explained, the other stuff that you wouldn't expect that would be difficult, or that moment when they felt the pressure of being on a movie set and were supposed to do something in a take, very simple thing like drop something, and they forgot, and I say cut, and they remember, and they start to tear up, and that's the moment you try to, no, it was a technical mistake, or that's not important, or you try to relieve the pressure because they're just kids. But they were so professional, at times you would forget.
I think it's very, very clear from the material that it was great. But I mean, I worked with children in other movies, and it can sometimes be more about, repairing or fixing things, rather than, but this was just amazing material to work with. But it was clear that you managed on set to create an atmosphere, an environment that made this possible, which is quite unique. I never seen anything like it, and that's to Sturla and Eskil and the crew and the people around these kids. They've done a great job, and it's a case that should be followed, or a method that because sometimes it goes so wrong with kids, and everybody gets stressed, and and as Eskil said, they're very really professional actors in this. So
cool. Well, Eskil, I know you have to run, but so thank you all of you for taking the time to chat with me about The Innoncents. This was such a cool conversation, and everyone please watch The Innoncents. It's out now.